everybody. Welcome to USA Wrestling Moments Off the Mat. My name is Mike Clayton. I'm your Coach Education Manager, and we are joined today by the members of the US Wrestling Association, National Wrestling Coaches Council, and some special guests. So welcome, everybody. And Zach, whenever you're ready, let's go ahead and start the show.
So welcome. And today will be an interesting day because today is attack versus counterattack. So there are certainly some multiple possible answers that probably could be correct in the process, but either way. So we talked earlier about the evaluation of holds, so that still comes into play, standing, parterre, etc. But there is going to be a first slide here. There's just going to be some questions to consider when you're watching the action. So we'll get started here. These are the questions that I would consider, at least to think about when you're watching this. The first one is, did the attacking wrestler maintain the hold throughout the action? Like they double leg, they have their hands on the legs, and those hands never release from the legs. So I think that's one thing you're looking for in this process. Another part I'm going to add to this that I don't have in this question is keep a note that 2 legs is different than 1 leg. If I have a double versus a single, head outside or head inside, but 2 is better than 1. Next one, did it change direction? Did they stop the action, start it again, or was there a change? It was going one direction, it ended up going a different direction. The next question, did the defensive wrestler go flat to their back? So if they went flat to their back during the action, for me, it's hard to score the counterattack with higher points. And then sometimes when you look at it, it'll look like somebody's action, but a lot of times there's always a part of who ended up in danger at the end of this. So sometimes they just end up on their back, and you did like, how did they get there? Well, clearly it must have been their action. And then when in doubt, the higher points go to the attacking wrestler. So when you're trying to figure out that part, when in doubt, score the person who made the attack with the higher points. So any questions on those questions? All right, awesome. Here's question 1, or video 1.
I hope it's as obvious as it looks, but I feel like I might have screwed up.
Everybody's always doubts themselves during the game now.
I always wonder if I hit my finger in between 2 buttons.
Awesome. Started with the one that was probably not quite as challenging. Why'd everybody score 4? Who? Nicole, what do you think?
Am I on mute? No? Okay.
On mute.
She started the attack in bounds. Blue landed on their back, and then red held onto the legs and finished on top. Held onto 2 legs, not just 1.
Very good. No points for blue.
No points for blue.
Yeah, I think this is a pretty clear one. She never came off the legs. Again, that's one of those questions that, like, one, she maintained the hold all the way through, and maintained the hold all the way through, and she had a double. A lot better than a single, like, but sometimes those situations depend on what this is, but that was a pretty clear one. So let's see who scored fast. Who was the fastest of the group here?
Man, I thought I was quick on the trigger.
All right, here we go. Next question. I will say they probably get progressively more difficult.
I mean, that's the thing in Southern Indiana. Do you know how long my internet cord is right now? Oh.
This is a good one.
I'm trying to click it on the computer instead of my phone.
Oh, yeah, I'm clicking the wrong device.
Oh.
I'm doing exactly what you were doing.
And I just gave you a warning about it too.
And I still got it wrong. I should have not done anything.
Danny, I can hear you counting points. I could hear you 4-2. Carry the
I didn't
4.
know I was
minus the 1.
speaking. I was looking at my fingers. You guys don't coach that way. You look at your hand, and then
100%. Yes. Yeah, count the points back. I'm like, okay, yeah, throw the brick.
All right, so the first part here is whose action is the first one.
Yeah, that's where I was wrong right off the bat. I thought blue's act. I mean,
yeah, I thought it was blue.
I did. I thought he put him straight. It's bad technique. He went right to his back. He got the leg. Boom. He plants him on his back. Then he elevates him over. He may take the move away afterward, but he planted himself on his back. That's why I went 4 red right off the bat.
I watched here with blues.
His feet didn't move.
Like to me, it looked like his feet.
Yeah.
He didn't start this move. This was red, and he stepped to try to like around it. So, like for me, I thought, and this is one of those things where when I look, like it looks like it could be blue's move, but then all of a sudden you look at how they end up at the very end, and it looked like to me that was only red's move in that process. So that was the first part of scoring. That is.
Be interesting to be on the far side too, like where red's arm is. Is that kind of like an old school cow catcher or bulldog, or I don't know what you guys call it? Rolling through with it.
I think it was blue steps up. Red changes his direction right there. You see blue's kind of heading to the right, stepping outside, and then red changes the direction. That's what made me say for red.
Yeah, there's definite direction change. Blue would not naturally go the way he went.
Yeah,
Right.
Exactly.
blue has both feet up in the air.
That's a new way to finish with your feet in the air like that. I don't understand what you guys are talking about.
So the first one here, because it was standing and went directly to danger, so 4 points for red, and then kind of gets out of position a little high, and then to me, I could not tell, at least that red ended up going back into danger at the end of this. Like in this process, I couldn't, for me, like on this video, there's no way I could tell. And it looks like he gets that arm over top of his head and gets his chest back down, so he doesn't give up 2 points at the end. So that's why I scored that as 4 red and then 1 blue for essentially the reversal coming up on top.
Yeah, I scored it wrong, but I like your explanation.
These are the most difficult ones. Like of all the situations I think we've had up to this point, like there are going to be some interesting ones coming up here. There's always lots of good options too.
Oh, my internet is so slow.
Ah, wrong one.
I'm going to go with something here that I doubt it's going to be right, but I feel like this is how it should be scored, and I'm going to defend myself.
You have to use one of these 4 colors, though.
Yeah.
I do narrow down the options.
I'm going with purple. Yeah.
Bingo, I was right.
I don't feel so bad when somebody else gets it right with me or wrong with me. When I get it wrong all alone,
All right, so we had a few that were 4 red, 2 blue.
I didn't score it that way. Sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead. No, you go ahead.
Okay, so the 4 red, 2 blue, that was honestly where I was headed because I saw James put his feet down on the ground. I saw him try to lift him up, try to really put a move to this. But then once I watched it one more time, as we got to the second replay, I didn't think blue ever exposed after I watched it. I was like, you know what? He had the leg. He took the shot. Blue doesn't look like he exposed. Maybe he was close, but he had the move to start with. And that's why I went, you know what? I'm just going to go with 4 blue. Because he held on to the leg the entire time. He didn't expose, or at least to this point, he didn't expose. And he took the attack. So that's why I went with blue on this one.
Am I off, or would this be a correct throw situation for red? He hits the throw, blue goes to his hip.
You know, I think that's a good question. I would probably not consider that a correct throw for a couple of reasons. One, I never saw blue let go of the leg. Like he never really did that. And it's hard to be a correct throw if you're under attack. Like you're under attack, you never really come off your back. Like you go to danger and never come off. You hit one side of your back in danger and then you rotate to the other side. So, I mean, I can see looking at it because he does kind of like throw him to his hip in that process. And that certainly would be that process. But I think that when I look at this way, like blue had made the leg and never really came off that leg that he had locked up. So it'd be hard for a correct hold in that. What's interesting is they scored this 2 red, 2 blue.
That's
what I did.
And
that's how I saw it. But after that explanation, it makes complete sense that it would be 4 blue.
So in this process, when I looked at, because like I remember watching this because this was the World Cup. If you thought red took him to his back, then it would have to be 4 red in that process because it was standing, because blue was in the standing position. Because if you watch this process here, like right now, blue is still standing. So if he takes him to his back, somebody, in my opinion, in this situation has to get 4 points. Like somebody's going to their back in this process. And if red takes it and rotates him all the way across, he's going to get 4 points. But he made a counter attack while he was under attack, and it didn't go well. So he ended up just on his back, which is why I would score that only as 4 blue.
I went 4 blue too, but I had to watch it a second time for the exposure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I thought that this is one of those ones actually, when people say, the U.S. doesn't get calls, we got calls. Like that went 2-2. And that's a game changer right there. When they got done, the score was 8-2.
Wow.
Instead of 6-4.
Wow.
That's a big difference. That's a 6-point swing in that match. So, but in that case, I thought it should have been scored 4 blue only.
Right, I'm nearly at least 1,000 points out of first.
This one looks too obvious.
Don't say that. I'll feel horrible.
And again, probably keep in mind too, this is always the correct answer is always my opinion. Right? It just makes it my opinion.
I hope we share opinions on this one, though.
I've had to remind myself of that quite a few times, Zach.
Oh
man!
What?
No,
See, this went in a completely different direction.
I'm glad we have.
He spun on his head.
I'm glad we have shared opinions on this one. I knew it.
The last 2, at least I went in the majority. Even though I'm wrong.
So the first action here, I think everybody agrees on the 4 red part of that.
Mm-hmm.
I thought he did a pretty good job. He got across to both legs. He got across to a double on this.
Yeah.
But I thought so.
Blue had 2 because red was going to the right, and then blue changed his direction and brought him over to the left. Well, looking at my screen, it's to the left. And then red finished on top again on his back. So that's why I went 4-2-2. Going to the right and then gets pulled over the other way.
Yeah, and you see a normal action. I wasn't convinced that blue got an exposure there, but in slow motion, it's obvious. So.
Yeah, I did the same thing. I just went to 4 red. I didn't see exposure to the fast motion.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know what? And the reality is, if you score only 4 red, it's the same outcome.
Right.
Yeah. So a lot of times, situations like this where it could be like a 4-2-2, a lot of times just goes 4 points only. But I think whenever you're, from a, it's not so important probably as much now in terms of because the way we in the U.S. we always do a bracket and we wrestle back to all places. But internationally, that 2 points is important because placing from below 5th place, so 7th place and down, is based on classification points and then by technical points. So by scoring, let's say 2 points out of that, that ensures them if they don't get pinned, they're going to get at least one technical point, and they're getting at least one classification point and 2 technical points, which add up to potentially raising their placement, which ultimately can affect the team championship, the team rankings and things like that based off of how you score. So those sometimes internationally, those points are maybe more important than they are at a national level, just because of how we run the tournaments and how we determine placing. But I agree, Nicole, I thought you had a great answer in terms of changing directions, because he had jumped to the one side, but stopped, went back the other direction. And here you can tell he's in danger in that position. And it looks like this is Blue rotating him there. And then Blue just ends up rotating back to his back. So
good eye for that.
Yeah, great explanation.
Thank you.
Okay.
Much better when it's not Greco.
All right, next.
Oh. I'm just clicking.
Depends if he was out of bounds or not.
Yeah.
Oh, see, I start looking at the move so hard, I forget little things like out of bounds.
I got it wrong.
I was 2 people. I must have hit too late. I was sure I hit green.
Should have showed that one 3 times.
Absolutely. Yeah. The one thing I'll tell you is sometimes watching them more is not better.
No.
Agreed.
Because the more you watch it, the more you start second guess everything you do. And that's the one thing we talk about with referees. I'm like, whatever it is, just score what you think it is and be confident what you do. Like you right or wrong, your chances of being right are better right out of the gate.
Definitely less confidence after watching it the second time.
Yeah. Did you write these taunting answers of like when it says incorrect, no one said it would be easy? It taunts me.
So I think everybody agrees here on the 4 red part. It's the aftermath of this is what happens. For those that scored the 1, why did you score the 1?
Basically, he was still in bounds. Head and chest were in bounds.
I would have scored. Watching it now for the 12th time, and I got this wrong. I thought red exposed, but now that I've watched it, he cartwheeled through really good, and he got the. So that's why Blue ended up on top with the reversal, essentially. It's to me now, just watching it slow again, I'm like, yep, he cartwheeled through, but Blue ended up on top. They're in bounds, 1 point after the score.
Yeah, I think one part too, also to keep in mind, like when you watch this part, notice how he pivots on top of his head, like they hit, they rotate and pivot and go down. And a lot of times if you see that type of movement where something hits and they never really go to dangers, they never really break the 90 plane, but they hit their head and they pivot across and then down in that process. A lot of times you're going to see 1 point given in those situations as well.
So the final answer is 1 point.
Yeah, 1 point Blue. So 4
I think
red, 1 blue.
What Sammy throw up? What did Sammy throw up?
It's a great question. I don't know if I can tell.
His left hand went for the red paddle. There's his red hand. See red?
He went 4 red for sure. I don't know what he scored after that, but he did lift up the 4 red paddle.
That's what I went. I'm glad. I agree with Sam.
Yeah.
So, very good. Well,
Fair enough.
The part is like, after watching this, you can go back through and say, oh yeah, this was probably the best score out of the situation. Yeah. But in a live situation, 4-2 is probably going to come up more times than not. You would have to see that from a specific angle and to know like, hey, wow, I don't think Sam might have had the best angle of that whole view from where he was at, whether he exposed or not. And
I think our mentalities are different also. Like coming from a coaching perspective, we're going to see things completely different than an official. Like an official is looking for the points, and we're looking for that technique. Like, oh, we taught this kid to pull them through or to turn their hips this way. And that doesn't really necessarily mean a whole lot to officials. They're looking for exposure, and we're looking at a more rounded picture of the wrestling, I think.
And one of the things we tell officials that rewatch this, especially the crews that are doing the video review, if you have to rewatch it 3-4 times, maybe the call that's on the mat is the best call there, and not overthink it so much. So,
you know, I think something, because I think it really having these conversations is good from both sides, and this is one thing we are trying to advocate more of with the referees and coaches, like kind of working together, because there's a lot that I know, like just from my instant, like I coach as well, but in this process of learning how you guys are talking through situations and what you see certainly helps me be able to evaluate like what you're seeing. And sometimes that helps by knowing how you're teaching a technique or how you're teaching something allows you to, as a referee, to also be able to anticipate those calls and those situations and positions better. And so that's why I think it's always such an important part of going the other way too. You know, not only your guys hearing how we're viewing things, but also like how you guys are teaching technique is such an important part. I'd always encourage, you know, the coaches have the coaches and referees in your area be able to get together and have those conversations, you know, because I think it helps both ways. All right, next. I like this one.
I got it wrong.
You always got 25% chance.
No,
it tells me I'm a pure genius, and then it tells me I'm wrong.
Yeah, right. Man, I pushed the wrong button. Man, I know what I did wrong.
I pushed the wrong button every time.
No. Yeah, got it. Yeah. I did push the wrong one. I was like, no, the wrong one. I knew exactly what I did wrong. Yellow is not the correct score. Green is the score. Oh, because from your feet, you can't have twos. Oh, Lord Almighty. Yep.
I went 4 blue there.
Well, I just started with the end, like blue ends up on top, and that's so I narrowed it down because blue had to, in my mind, blue kind of had to score last.
This was a little trip. Boom. Red was on her back. Blue put her there.
4-2-1 all day long. It seems easy to me to see that.
Like it's definitely in this process, red steps here, but then blue's taking it back. She goes to danger. And then that's the next part right there is whether.
Yep.
And I think this is where, at this point, red is taking blue to danger in this process. Like she's in danger and she's kind of has lost control of this process right here. So.
Just that example with her feet in the air again. So
yeah, like right there, her arm is no longer holding.
So
her legs are here, and she is definitely in danger in this process.
So what did you score this?
4 blue, 2 red, and 1 blue for coming up on top.
Wow.
I overthought this. After the first time, I focused on that red hook on the ankle, and then I gave 4 red just because I was overthinking it because I thought she lifted the foot, but the change of direction, I'm watching it now a bunch of times. Right here, I just see her lifting Blue's foot, and I was like, maybe that's why 4 red was an option. But you were just tricking us.
No, it's certainly an option, I think, but in this case. Let me go back here. And this is a situation where, again, somebody probably has to get 4 points.
Right.
It's standing, and somebody's going to danger. So the question is who? And again, this is really just a matter too of whose move do you think this was? You looked at it and said, "Hey, I think this is Red's move," whereas I looked at it and said, to me, it looked like Blue was taking her backwards first, and then Red just hooked her ankle in that process to kick her over to that part. So, but again, sometimes it's just a matter of perception in terms of where you're viewing it and who you view the attacking wrestler is in that process. All right. Takara, last question. Very good.
That's where it's tough. You know you're going to lose, but it's like when you're down by 30 in a football game, but you still try to get one touchdown.
My video's so choppy.
Yeah.
One more time.
All right, I'm wrong. I have not had a good day. Tuesdays is now a good day.
What did you do, Zach? You go 4 blue?
Yep, I went 4 blue.
I went 4 blue.
I went.
And I
I
knew
went 4 blue.
Ah!
Yep. I'll be honest with you, I didn't think red took that move away from blue at all. In the end, I felt red had a good lock.
Blue did all the work.
I see that he's lifting it, but
what move is red going where he's taking him backwards with his arm like this?
I feel like blue is taking an odd direction, but controlling it.
I didn't feel like red could create that action in that direction.
Yeah.
Agreed.
He's going to dislocate his shoulder trying to throw backwards like that.
If he would have brought him like I don't know, you guys, I call it a neck wrench, but brought him like completely around, then maybe. But he ends up going the other way. And to go back to your first rule, Zach Arrett, his hands kept locked. They never let go of the move, right? He's like having a body lock is like having a double leg, right? You got 2 hands around that are locked.
Like, how do you take that move in the opposite direction on one leg?
I agree.
With your weight going in the opposite direction.
Red's goal is to snap up, bring him forward, but Red ended up going backwards.
Extended on one leg.
Who got this one right? Everybody's talking.
There are a few people that got it right.
I got it right. It's just that the
answer clicked on the wrong button again.
So when Danny gets it right, it's just because pure accident. Okay, got it.
No, I'm saying I got it right, but
I know
whoever's grading this counted it wrong.
Yeah, I got it right. It was my video's been choppy the whole time, so I only saw pieces. So I said blue is on top, and then I just saw that chin whizzer throw, and I was like, that has to be 4. I just chopped it together with the pieces I saw. And
play it again, Zach.
So check out Red's left arm here, and this is kind of what pushed me. He gets under, and blue lands, and
that's 4 blue.
That's got to be 4 blue. I will not relinquish this.
Yeah, Red's trying to bring
how Red can get the momentum
shoulder
to go the opposite way. You cannot get momentum like that.
I stick by it. This is no red points at all.
No, look, his weight is going to the
So
yeah, he's trying to go that way and gets taken the other way.
Red initiates, and he's able to.
What does he initiate? Going to his back?
Out, and then his direction's changed.
He's initiating going to his back.
Based on the laws of inertia, he could not have made that go in the opposite direction. You can't.
Right. All right. Tell him.
Physics.
I'm going to take the explanation of Coach Struck. I just clicked the button and got it right.
Yeah, for sure. All right, Zach, tell us why we got it wrong.
No, I'm just, and I'm not saying. I'm just here's what I saw, because a lot of you are right. Like, he starts here, and as he goes, like, he's going this direction, but then he stops. To me, like,
goes to his back.
Watch this foot right here. And he has this arm. He ends up getting his arm under the far side.
Yeah, his left arm gets into a hook.
He steps with the left foot. And to me, he makes the action this way. But to me, I watch Blue's feet, and I don't see Blue making an action. Blue's just trying to hold him here, and Blue's not stepping around to the front. Because, which way would you guys take this if you were in this position?
I would go to the back. Like, as a good Greco, you'd go to his back. You would never go front.
Which way would you go?
To his
left.
Left.
Blue would go
around his back. He would go to his left.
Yeah,
Blue's
two's
left.
left.
Yeah. So, but watch his feet. I guess when I watch, I'm watching Red's feet, and then I watch the
Mhm.
process after this.
He's
Like he
see,
never
Blue's
steps.
circling, but Blue's circling the way he would. That's the way you would normally go, in my opinion. That if
Yeah.
you're a good body lock here, this is the direction you're going. You're going behind him to
Mhm.
lift and arch because you're going to start pedaling as you get behind him.
I don't disagree that. I guess my concept is I watch his foot, it never moves. Like he steps around him and his foot stays planted.
I feel like Blue threw though when Red stepped. Like he couldn't have thrown Red when Red's foot was still planted. Once it moved, he threw.
He doesn't need to move that foot because he's already loaded and he's got his center of gravity. So when he took that step back with his right foot, now he can finish his throw.
And like right here, like I don't see how Red is in control. Like his hips, his head, nothing seems like it would be in a position of power to pull it through going behind him in the opposite direction.
If Red ended up on top, I could see it. But at the end, Blue's the one on top.
I guess that's the part I see in that process too. Like right now, Red is
Blue's
not in
feet
danger.
are still loaded. He's still doing the motion. He's still doing the throw.
That's where slow motion gets you in trouble. Stop it.
Exactly.
Yeah, just pausing it. If you pause, every gut wrench is back exposure for the wrong guy.
True.
Zach, if you go watch the 2019 semifinals, 77 kilo, Sweden versus I think it's the Russian. There's a similar scenario, but they go out of bounds with this, and they give it to the guy they would give it to the Red, right? The Swede got the call, but they went all the way out of bounds because they were on their back. But inbounds per the first slide, the hands are locked. I'm still continuing to drive. I didn't stop my momentum, right? We're still wrestling. Now, if they land out of bounds and Blue's on his back like that, I got, you know what? That's right. I got to go that way.
But let me ask you this question. If Blue makes this throw, wouldn't he rotate Red all the way through?
No, because you can continue to unload on that side.
Because like right now, it's like
Blue circles.
And then he came back up on top. You know, like I guess that's the part when I'm viewing this, and I could be wrong on this.
No, you gotta have good body awareness because sometimes with the arm spin, you're gonna come around and finish like under the arms, and sometimes you gotta let go and roll down towards the leg depending on what the other person's doing.
I feel like Blue never loses that
the
lock
arm around
either.
his neck, then he's
Even
gonna go the other way.
Even when Blue's back's exposed, his lock is intact. Like he knows what he's doing. He's comfortable there.
Man, I didn't even make the podium.
Nice job.
I got last place last
Girls
time.
killed it.
Woohoo!
Yeah, girls killed it.
Girls did. Danny, I don't see you up here, buddy.
Close points too, within 100 points.
I voted in the majority on all the calls. That's what I'm sticking with. I do wonder, like, if Fargo does happen and a bunch of referees watch this, are they going to be like, "Oh, you're that guy that always got it wrong"? So, like, it's invalid.
Don't pay any attention to him. Don't even let him come to the table.
If they don't say it, I'm going to tell them while I'm there.
Yeah, I think there's going to be a thing that goes on your badge, your ID.
Yeah.
Oh, that way they just know your percentage of correct answers on scores.
I will point out though that I always voted in the majority, and I'm going to say, the whole crowd's on my side.
Everybody, right? All those people.
Yeah.
Those are good clips.
Yeah, I think what this is, and at Fargo, this is when I typically have done this. I usually take a lot of these situations, and I don't even give the correct score. I just, whenever we have the coaches meeting, I always put stuff like this up and say, score it for me. What do you guys think the score is? And I just listen to all the different options that come up during that time. And really the reason I do that is not to try to be right or wrong in that scenario. It's just to be like, just know that these are the most difficult situations. And certainly where you stand, how you view it, where you're looking at it. If it's your kid, you're going to have a bias toward how it gets scored. But just know that Mat 2 and Mat 23 aren't going to look the same. They may not score this exactly the same way. So, kind of, sometimes you get the bear and sometimes the bear gets you. Certainly, if you want to get it looked at, you have the option to challenge it. But those are tough ones. I mean, it all depends on who's looking at it.
How do we look at these scoring situations? We might talk about one of these situations for 4 or 5 minutes and still disagree. How has this changed your outlook on how you'll challenge in the future?
I don't know if it'll change too much for me, but I think it does help me evaluate the principles in which I do challenge, right? So if there's a short time on the clock and I need to change, maybe it's a swing in a match, or if we're looking at 4 versus 2, like the importance of the challenge, I think is what's made me think a little bit different. If it's 1 point, do I really want to chase down 1? Maybe if it's 2, if it's less time in the match, am I going to, in the beginning of a match as opposed to the end of the match, unless it's obviously blatant and they just didn't see it and the camera's going to see it. But I think the importance or how you plan out the attack is what this is making me redevelop, so that I know when I am going to go throw a challenge, the odds of me being right are still the same, but at least I know that I'm doing it with the right intention of, okay, there's short time, this is a winning percent, or the winning on this is important, or 4 points can swing a match as opposed to 2. So things like that.
Yeah. I think back to when we started the video challenge process years and years ago, and an official would take a challenge as you're wrong. You're absolutely wrong. And there was some animosity between the coaches because the coaches are telling the official, you're wrong, I'm going to video challenge. That process has changed tremendously to the fact that as an official, I think most officials are coming up with the idea that, hey, that coach probably thinks there's a better call there. Let's look at it. And so that process has changed a lot for officials. And I think coaches have changed their philosophy on challenges also. When we first started this, it was pretty rugged. It's much better process than it used to be.
Yeah, I don't view a challenge as saying you're wrong. I have always thought of it as let's get it right. That's for me, that's what the way the challenge is. Because if you always look at it as right or wrong, it's never gonna feel good at all. Because you got it right, I got it wrong, or vice versa. But if we have a chance to get it right, that's what we should be trying to do. That's the way I've always viewed the challenge.
Get it right, or even make it better.
One of the things that I always take into account before I throw the block is what angle the camera has, because sometimes I may see something that the camera can't see, or I have a question. I'm like, I couldn't see that angle, but I think the camera might have picked up. And so, I mean, I'm always not cautious, but I'm not afraid to throw the block. But those are just some other things that I take into consideration when I do throw it.
I think instinct has a lot to do with it. I mean, as an official, it's instinct that you throw up points. I think coaches have the same thing. Instinctively, they want to throw the block out there and get a process going.
So Zach and Tom, you have to close your ears. I'll tell you, when I get down into later rounds, Fargo especially, or even in the later rounds of a regional or anywhere, I can take advantage of a scenario in the United States. We have less wrestlers wrestling, but I have the same amount of coaches with me. I will put a coach on the same side as the camera or as close to the camera so that I can look over and he can say, hey, don't throw the block, or hey, the camera saw the leg foul, throw the block. That's not saying that he's coaching. He's just standing there. He's watching. I'm just watching for him to watch me and my other coaches next to me. But like I said, this isn't in the beginning of the rounds, right? This is when we have 1,000 wrestlers going. But when we're down to the last, semifinals, quarterfinals, when the matches are of importance, I'll stick a coach on the same side as the chair and the video, and they'll flat out just look right at me and go, don't throw it, or do throw it. And we have that triangle.
I don't see anything wrong with that.
Yeah,
I see that as being smart, but I'm not going to tell you that.
Right. And I know that they're not allowed to talk, and I know they're not allowed to say, because the rules are, if you say one word to that official, you're in big trouble. So they stand there, and their point of communication is directly at me or the coach in the corner. And I'm sometimes that guy. I'm the guy sitting over there next to the chair because I'm not going to say anything because I know the rules. So I'll just say, hey man, throw the block or not throw the block. And that's what I do in the later rounds, because again, we have less wrestlers, but we have still the same amount of coaches. So we'll watch each other's backs that way.
Everybody, thank you so much for joining us with USA Wrestling's Moments Off the Mat and our U.S. Wrestling Officials Association Challenge Block game. So thanks to our special guests, our Coaches Council, and the USWOA, and we'll look forward to seeing you guys next time. Thanks so much.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot, guys.